Welcome to the Political Power Hour with your host, former congressional candidate, retired federal agent, and three-time author, Michael Vilardi, highlighting today's political hot topics with the most interesting political candidates in the 2022 election. The most hard-hitting political commentary on the air today. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to tonight's show. I'm your host, Mike Vilardi. Welcome to the Political Power Hour. I have another great show for you tonight. I have with me Keith Feit. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here as always, and I'm looking forward to having a lot of fun tonight.
Yes, well, Keith, tell the audience about what you're running for, who you are, and why we need to win this race.
All right. I'm the Republican candidate for State House in District 90, running against the Democrat incumbent Joe Casello. And I'm running because when I looked at Joe Casello's voting record, I saw that he voted against parents, against protecting our children in the education system, against putting Floridians first when it comes to immigration and sanctuary cities. And I just felt like something needed to be done. There needed to be somebody to run against him, to give the voters a choice. And really, this is, 2022 is make or break for our country, because we are on the precipice here. Not since the Civil War have we been this divided and this close to really going over the cliff. So, I feel like we need constitutional conservatives running for office. And if I'm going to tell other people to do it, I think I need to do it myself.
We appreciate you stepping up to the plate and running for office. And we're trying to help you get elected. And there's going to be a fundraiser on Wednesday. And tonight's Monday night, so it's not too late. $125 a head. Fiorella's restaurant. Start time, 6 o'clock?
7 o'clock start time, 6:30.
6:30?
Mingle, meet and greet.
Okay. Meet and greet, 6:30. Please buy your tickets. Tell them how they get the tickets, exactly what they need to do to come see us on Wednesday night.
All right. If you go to our website, www.feit2022.org, it's FEIT2022.org. Just scroll down on the homepage and you'll see a link there for our fundraiser in order to buy tickets.
All right, great. And we hope that you support Keith. And perchance, if you're watching the show after Wednesday night and you can't make it, I ask that you donate $25, $30, $40, whatever you can do to the cause. We think Keith has a great chance to win. 2022 is one of the most unusual election years ever. We're seeing history in the making. We have rampant inflation. Here in Palm Beach County, rents have gone up 42%. Hasn't been that high in 50, 60 years, if that, maybe even longer. We have, obviously, we all know gas prices had doubled from the $1.69. They went all the way up to $5 before they started to retreat. And that retreat is only going to be temporary because of the new legislation that the regulation that they're going to have after January. Of course, they wanted to make sure that those regulations don't hit until after the election, so they could possibly try and hold the Congress. And I don't think that's going to happen. But that's why they did it. So we're going to go back to $5 gas in January. I'm sure that's something we're all looking forward to. In California, they can't even charge the electric cars that they have because they can't produce enough energy. Now, how ridiculous is that?
Well, when you speak about California, it's just ridiculous to begin with. Everything they do. There's no possible way that our economy, that our nation can be run on energy from solar power and windmills. It's not possible. You can't garner enough energy from those sources to make it happen. So fossil fuels are not going to be going away. The environmentalists didn't want nuclear, right? It's clean. It's relatively safe. For the most part, it's absolutely safe. And it could generate lots of energy, but they didn't want that. And so they expect us to rely on wind and solar, and there's just not enough land for the wind and solar farms and not enough energy produced. So it's a pipe dream.
Well, not only that, but you know how many birds have been killed because they can't see the blades of the windmill and they fly into it?
Yeah.
And you have hundreds of thousands of dead birds.
The left used to care about that.
Right, of course, not anymore. Now, and here's the amazing thing. I listened to a scientist talk about this. What we're seeing, right, the changes in the weather and pattern is based on solar eclipses, moons, planetary alignments. So you go back and you see that there were hotter temperatures in the 30s, okay,
right,
than there were today. So it has nothing to do with the carbon emissions. Matter of fact, I mean, those carbon emissions is oxygen for the trees, right? I mean, that's what the trees breathe, and they produce oxygen.
Right.
So it's really nothing more than a scam that we're falling for, and it's costing us a fortune. And when Donald Trump was in office, he was smart enough to save us $1 trillion by pulling out of the Paris Accords, by getting rid of the getting rid of the regulation on our energy. We had, for the first time in over 40 years, we were a net energy exporter of crude oil. Right. We were energy independent, and we were paying $1.69 for gasoline, which meant everybody lived better. The cost of living was less for everybody. The oil companies still made money, and the American consumer had a great lifestyle. And since then, it's been nothing but a nightmare.
Absolutely. Well, when you talk about the climate, I call it the climate tyranny.
Right.
It's all about control. Every policy of the left is about control. We saw that with taking away our health freedom, with the mask and vaccine mandates. We see that in economics, where they want to take more money from those who are successful and redistribute the wealth. It's just one thing after another, and climate change is no different. So, if you support conservative candidates, then you're supporting freedom, you're supporting liberty, you're supporting prosperity. And if you support a Democrat, today's Democrats, which, I tell everybody that the party of Kennedy and Clinton is now the party of Marx and Mao.
Right.
That if you support them, then you're supporting the government running your life, telling you how to spend your money, what to eat, how to raise your kids, what to put into your body. And it's just, it couldn't be a clearer choice than it is in 2022. It's freedom versus tyranny. It's government control versus individual liberty. And people have a very, very clear choice in voting this year.
Well, let's look at some of that tyranny like you spoke about. First of all, let's talk about Illinois. They passed a state law that begins January 1st, where if you murder somebody, there's no cash bail. You get an appearance ticket. Go out and murder again. Now, I don't know how anybody could think that's a good idea. I mean, look at the crime in California and New York City, for instance. In California, they allow you to steal up to $1,000.
Right.
You know how many businesses are going under?
Absolutely.
Would you start a business in California where they're not going to prosecute shoplifters?
No, you can't.
We're going to let people walk out the door with $1,000 worth of art? In a matter of the next 5 years, I would say San Francisco, LA, the places where they're allowing that to happen are going to become ghost towns.
Absolutely.
CVS. In New York City, they have to lock up things like toothpaste.
I saw that.
Okay?
I saw that. Simple little items.
So the cost of everything goes through the roof because of the fact of what it costs you to protect the item. Going to double. And so rather than pay twice, you're going to look to steal it.
Right.
People are smashing and grabbing. New York defunded the police under Bill de Blasio, $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Now, murder, rape, assault, every crime is up. Response times are down. The police can't get there timely. Cops don't want to be cops. They're walking off the job. Why would you want to take put your life on the line. For what?
No, and that's what we see in these cities that are run by the leftists. We see the crime because, number one, there is no accountability, like you mentioned.
Right.
Commit a crime, you're back out in the street. We have far left woke prosecutors who refuse to prosecute crimes.
Right.
We have Democrat elected officials who are endorsing these kind of policies. And meanwhile, as they want to defund the police, they have their private security. Right? They have their big fences. They don't want to build a wall, but they have walls around their homes. It's just hypocrisy. Just like with immigration, we see, Governor DeSantis sends 50 migrants, illegal aliens, to Martha's Vineyard, and oh my God, no, it's a crisis. Or to New York, or to Washington, D.C. These are crises, but these are sanctuary cities. They are supposed to give sanctuary to illegal aliens. But it's the same all the time with the left. It's rules for thee and not for me. So let's take, let in 1 million illegal aliens. As long as they don't come to our neighborhood, then, that's what America was built on. But if they come to our neighborhood, then our community, then it's a crisis. And that's what the left is.
Now, but according to Joe Biden, and he says the real problem is the MAGA Republicans, those that want to make America great again. They're the real problem. Don't you agree, Keith?
This president likes to talk about the threat to democracy when he has done nothing but attack democracy since he's come into office. We have free speech under assault. We have the Second Amendment under assault. We have the government, our health freedom under assault. Political opposition being persecuted by the FBI, the IRS. When government agencies are used against the citizenry, that is the definition of tyranny.
Yes.
And that is, by definition, a threat to democracy. So the real threat to democracy is the left.
So you really don't think that 87,000 new IRS agents are there to help you?
The fact that we can spend all that money hiring 87,000 new IRS agents, but we can't hire more Border Patrol agents to secure our southern border is a joke. The fact that we're going to hire members of an agency whose specific job it is to go after American citizens just tells you the mindset of the left. This is not about getting the corporations and getting businesses to pay their fair share. It's about attacking the American people, and mostly about attacking the political opposition. That's what it's about. Those IRS agents are going to be used against conservatives, against those who speak up against Biden, and you see that there is collusion with the White House and the FBI, and you see stories now about Joe Biden trying to pressure the FBI into concocting these claims of white supremacy, because he really wants to push that narrative, because he knows there's no chance that they can win an election based on policy differences.
Well, have you, the Biden laptop, they had a book about everything that was in there. Now, I'm reading the book. I'm not done with it yet. It's very clear about the money that came into the Biden family from China. I think what it is Joe Biden's afraid that he will be impeached if the Republicans win, which is, of course, true. The difference between him being impeached and Trump being impeached is that there's absolutely a substantial amount of evidence that can convict him. And not only can convict him for taking money, but when you take money from a foreign government and then you return a favor to the foreign government, for instance, they sold our strategic oil reserve to China.
Right.
Now, it's the point of the strategic oil reserve is in the event of a war. Now, we got a war with Russia and Ukraine. Don't you think maybe we're going to need that strategic oil reserve to sell it to China, which is not only a communist country but considered an enemy of the United States to a large degree? Could be an impeachable offense.
Absolutely. And our strategic reserves are down to, I think, the lowest level in 40 plus years.
Yep.
And with the world on the brink of war, not only Russia and Ukraine, but you have China and Taiwan. You have Iran, who knows what they're ever going to do. North Korea with Kim Jong-un threatening that if anything happens to him, the nukes are ready to go off. I mean, this is a crazy world, and for the president to put politics over our national security absolutely is impeachable. And, I mean, he and all this, and the big guy only got 10%.
Sometimes that's all you need is 10%.
I would have thought he would have been smart enough, well, until he was president, I would have thought he was smart enough to get more than 10%. Now I know the truth.
Well, look, I mean, here's the sad reality. The sad reality is crime is up all over the country. Every major city, mostly in democratically run cities. Inflation is running rampant, as high as when Jimmy Carter was in office. Interest rates are starting to take off again. That means that people are going to be less able to afford a home.
We're going to have a housing recession.
You're going to have a housing recession that's coming in. The stock market has sold off already, and I think is going to continue to sell off. So you're going to have a recession. People's 401ks are getting hit hard. They're paying more for rent. They're paying more for gas. They're paying more for food. I don't understand why anybody would be voting Democratic, given what has happened over the last 2 years. So help me with it, because I can't figure it out.
I think we have a media that obviously is biased in their coverage.
Right.
So you have a lot of people who buy the hype of the left. When they say the Inflation Reduction Act, people only see it being promoted, by the media, and they don't understand it's actually the inflation, not reduction, but
no. Listen, the only way they can hope to reduce inflation, right, is they're going to take they're going to pick the pockets of the American taxpayer with 87,000 new IRS agents. Okay, that means the government gets more and you get less. And what is the government spending it on?
They're they're buying votes or trying to buy votes, and I just saw a poll that. Joe Biden is not even good at that, because 59% of the American people think that his student loan bailout, whatever you want to call it, it's not forgiveness, because we're going to be on the hook for doctors and lawyers who went to Ivy League schools. But 59% of the American people said that it's unfair, it's not right, and it was political. It's a political ploy. Even a majority of Democrats.
Look, let me ask you a question, Keith. If you were concerned truly about the environment and you wanted to give tax incentives for electric cars, would you not give those tax incentives to a company like Tesla, who only makes electric cars? What did Joe Biden do? He gave tax incentives to auto manufacturers that only had union labor. That means Ford, GM, Chrysler, not Tesla, who sells and produces more electric cars than anybody. So that tells me right there, it's all about politics. It has nothing to do with the environment in reality.
It always is. And the thing about this whole environmental push and the electric cars, number one, if they really cared about the environment, they would be opening up more oil and gas drilling and fracking here, where we have the cleanest energy retrieval in the world.
Exactly right, correct.
Instead, they're going to stop American production, and they're going to ask Russia and Iran and Venezuela, where it's a lot dirtier, a lot worse for the environment, because they know we need the fossil fuels.
Of course.
But they want to pretend that they're concerned about the environment. Secondly, when you look at electric cars, with what it takes to produce just one battery for an electric car, okay, it's not this panacea. It's not this utopia of environmental friendliness. And unfortunately, most people don't understand the truth about it.
Those rare metals like cobalt, what it takes to mine them, okay? I mean, the amount of oil used to mine the cobalt that's necessary to produce a battery is humongous. So it's a farce. Is really what it is.
And it takes a lot of fossil fuel to mine
Right.
the stuff you need for the battery.
Right.
So, and you get a lot less energy from that battery
Right.
than you do from the fossil fuels that we used to mine the materials for it.
And now what happens when the electric car dies on the highway? It's dead right there.
Yeah, well, unless you're willing to spend hours and hours each day charging, if you're on the road, it's totally, impractical. It's totally impractical if you're going to be on the road.
Yeah.
Because you don't have enough time to charge it.
The ones I think that make sense are the hybrids like I have, because they have 2 engines, or the plug-in hybrids, where you can get 136 miles to the gallon, like one of my buddies has, because it can run the electric battery for up to 40 miles by itself. So if you're going to go on a long trip, you got the gas. And if you're going to go on short trips, then it just runs on the electric. But now you have the best of both worlds. You never have to worry about running out unless you don't put any gas in it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But and it's also, you're going to get more miles per gallon per se. Now the other thing is our infrastructure is based on gas taxes. So if everybody has an electric car, that means you don't have any money for roads, bridges, and highways.
And you have to build the infrastructure for all those charging stations.
All those charging stations.
It's impractical.
So economically and practicality-wise, it makes zero sense.
None at all.
I mean, who's doing the thinking here?
Well, Joe Biden. That's why. Actually, we know he's not. But his advisors are just far left. Whether they're these far left environmentalists, these far left socialists, every one of his advisors promotes anti-American policies. Yeah. They promote anti-American policies, and that's why this country's not looking like America. I mean, let's think about it. Forget about whether or not we want people to drive gas or electric or hybrid cars, but isn't this America? Don't we have the freedom to choose what we drive?
You talk about freedom to choose. I just read an article where in New York City, they actually fired a whole bunch of school teachers because they didn't get the vaccine.
And they cry about teacher shortages.
Of course. Now, how foolish is that? First of all, COVID is pretty much past, number one.
It's over, according to Biden.
Right, okay, so COVID's done. Number two, what's the point of getting the vaccine at this point? The vaccine has proved that it doesn't work. It does not stop you from getting COVID. So the vaccine doesn't stop you from getting it. Joe Biden has been vaccinated twice, boosted twice, and got COVID twice after he was vaxxed and boosted.
Well, at this point, just about everybody's had COVID, whether they knew it or not. I mean, so everybody has natural immunity, and even Fauci said years ago, natural immunity is better than any artificial immunity we can come up with. So at this point, you're absolutely right. There's no need for it. And I saw some people or heard some people talking about it today. If Joe Biden declares the pandemic is over, then why aren't all of these people returned?
Right.
Why aren't those military, like Governor DeSantis tweeted about it today, why aren't those soldiers and those sailors back into the armed forces where they belong, because they were kicked out for not having the vaccine?
A vaccine that has not been FDA approved
Right.
was an experimental drug that's been known to change your rDNA and doesn't stop you from getting COVID.
Right. It's anti-American. It's unconstitutional.
Crazy. So in order for us to make changes in this country, the first step is to win back the Congress. If we do not win back the Congress, now, I just want to go back in history. The last, I think it's 60, maybe even longer, 60 or 80 years, the party in power has always lost seats in the midterms, without exception.
Right.
It happened when Trump was in office. It happened when Obama was in office. Now, when Obama was in office, they passed Obamacare in 2010. That election cycle, they lost 63 congressional seats. 63.
Right.
Now, we have the highest inflation. We have food costs going through the roof. We have crime out of control. We have a war over in Ukraine. All this stuff since Biden became our president. How many seats do you think Republicans are going to be able to flip in this election cycle?
Well, it's so hard to read because of missteps that are made by the Republican Party. And just an example, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision, which was the absolute correct judgment.
It was, absolutely.
Abortion is not in the Constitution, therefore, according to the 10th Amendment, it's reserved for the states and the people.
That's right. Even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a liberal, said that, right?
Exactly. It was decided, in error. But the thing is, it's a state power. And now we have Lindsey Graham, on the day that they announced the inflation numbers, and the Democrats are celebrating the Inflation Reduction Act, as Americans are suffering. But let me just, on that day, Lindsey Graham steps in front of the country and talks about the bill he introduced for a federal abortion ban. So how in the world can any Republican, even a pro-life Republican, how can any Republican support a federal abortion ban after celebrating the Supreme Court making the right decision and sending abortion back to the states? If the federal government can't ban abortion, then can't make it legal, blanket across the country, then they certainly shouldn't be able to ban it either.
No, you're right. But that was also the same day the stock market sold off. And it was the largest sell-off in 40 years.
Absolutely. And Lindsey Graham's up there talking about abortion.
Yeah, that's just foolish politics.
That's why people talk about the red wave, but we really don't know. Because there's less than 50 days now, maybe 49 days, something like that to the election. And it's an eternity in politics. So we don't know what's going to happen on the world stage. We don't know what's going to happen. Economically, something happens with that open border. Who knows what happens there? So there's so many things that can happen. And Republicans, for some reason, they seem to be very good at shooting themselves in the feet these days.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. We're going to get on that in a second. But I want to just make this comment. 2020, Republicans picked up 14 House seats. Now, they had lost 18 back, 2 years earlier in 18. They picked up 14 of the 18. There's only a 5-seat Democratic majority, which means we pick up 3 seats, swing those 3 seats, it's a Republican House. Now, that's going to happen if for no other reason because of the way the redistricting in some of the Republican states like Florida.
Right.
Florida picked up an extra seat. Right. So that means New York lost a seat. So Maloney is out of her spot. Okay, that was that big runoff that they had in New York.
With Nadler.
With Nadler, right. California lost a seat. That's another Democratic seat lost, and that went to Texas. The Republicans are going to pick up that seat.
Right.
So, conceivably, it should not be hard to pick up at least 5 seats. To change Congress.
I think, chances are, obviously, I don't know whether you say 80%, 90%, whatever it is, that the Republicans take the House. Senate's a different story.
Right.
But like you mentioned, it's just because of the numbers.
Right, exactly. I mean, so that happens. Now, let's talk about the local races here. And let's talk about, you said Republicans shoot themselves in the foot. Did you not?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the local race here, we got Dan Francis, who won the race. Very contested against Deborah Deemy. And now I guess there's a recount or something. She's suing. There's some sort of lawsuit going on. In order for the Republicans to win, the number one thing they have to do is support their candidate. Dan happens to be, I think, a great candidate. He has what it takes to be a great congressman. But to get some of the supporters, the supporters that the Ademi supporters behind him is going to be very tough to do. we need to bring together the Republican Party, because we're in a mostly Democratic district, so we have to have all the Republicans show up to vote.
Right.
And then we have to be able to take some of these issues and turn Democrats into Republicans.
Absolutely.
Either sit home or so we're at a hard break. We're going to be back with Keith in 2 minutes. Thank you for watching. We'll be back. Commercial break. Here we go.
If your family is suffering from inflation and high costs caused by Lois Frankel's reckless policies, Republican Dan Franzese is clearly your best choice for Congress. Dan is a successful businessman who understands finance and economics. He's not a politician. Dan grew up blue collar and knows how tough inflation is on working families. Dan Franzese will go to Washington and fight the liberals who are killing us with inflation. Dan Franzese for Congress.
I'm Dan Franzese, and I approve this message.
I grew up in a home where principles and values were very strong. We had the opportunity to gather 1.5 million people to stand up and be the voice for our children. As an American, I will be your new voice, and I will stand up for the integrity of our children. This November 8th, vote for me, Dorcas Hernandez, running for State Representative District 92.
Text alert! Text alert!
I was receiving letter after letter from the IRS.
I got Mike Vilardi on the phone and I said, Mike, I got a problem.
He took the pressure off my shoulders.
He just made me feel like I had Superman on my side.
Trust me, he's the man to go to.
IRS problems? I'm Mike Vilardi, enrolled agent. I can help. My company, Winning Tax Solutions, has always gotten our clients the best possible results. Visit us at winningtaxsolutions.com or call us today.
You've been watching the Political Power Hour with Mike Vilardi. For more information, email us at mikevilardi@gmail.com. That's Vilardi with one L. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back. We're back here with Keith Feit. We're just talking about the local congressional race and what we can do to change things around and get Republicans to unify. Because like you said, with Lindsey Graham, I mean, that was such poor politics. I mean, not thinking at all. Mm-hmm. What we need to do, we got to take the House back. Because if we take the House back, then we control the purse strings and we can control some of this ridiculous spending.
Right, which is a direct cause of the inflation, no matter what,
exactly.
What Biden wants to say. It's government spending that causes inflation. When you don't have money and you print it, I mean, that's what inflation is.
Right. You got a $30 trillion debt, which is
31 now, right?
I don't know how we're getting out of that. Unless we have a balanced budget. First, you need a balanced budget.
Absolutely.
Second, you need to start reducing the debt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so we have to have better policies.
Well, it has to start with stopping these giveaways, these political giveaways.
Right.
You know, when you talk about how many hundreds of billions up to $1 trillion in this student loan, quote unquote, forgiveness again.
Exactly.
You know, those are the kind of things that's why the debt is $31 trillion.
And you know, when we look at the local race with Lois Frankel, she has spent more money than almost anybody in Congress. She's like in the top 5 when it comes to spenders.
Well, you know, we need a balanced budget, and we need to get rid of these earmarks. You know,
yes, we do.
And we need to have standalone bills because these slick professional politicians slide their pork spending into these must-pass bills.
Right.
And you're passing a bill to fund the government, and all of a sudden, you get whatever it is. You get catfish mating research.
Well, that is important,
in
though.
States. Well,
not as
for
important.
some people it is.
I mean, but not as important as the mating habits of the hyenas in West Africa. That is my number one question, is exactly how that happens. But that's neither here nor there. No, but the point is, something has to change in politics. When I ran for Congress, I was adamant about term limits. Mm-hmm. Okay, the problem with power is it corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, and we see that in the White House already.
Absolutely.
So the only thing you can do is force people out of their positions. And that's what term limits would do. Now, we have it for the presidency. We need it for Senate. We need it for Congress.
Absolutely, and we have it at the state level.
We do.
We have it here in Florida at the state level. And unfortunately, Joe Casello's not there yet, so we're going to have to vote him out of office. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have his bad vote after bad vote.
Right. Because look at some of these politicians. Nancy Pelosi picked up, I think, $29 million in campaign contributions. Now, if she doesn't have the safest seat around, right, because everybody in San Francisco is a Democrat, who does? Now, why would you pay her $29 million? Why? Because she's writing legislation that's going to benefit her donors.
Right.
And then you look at the stock picks. Now, she is a brilliant stock picker. I mean, they've made millions and millions of dollars in stocks. I mean, amazing.
The whole Congress has to be drained. It's not even by party. It's just whether you're a Democrat or Republican, when you spend that much time in Washington, D.C., you become corrupted and you become a creature of the swamp.
Well, you know, that's why I like somebody like Dan. He's not a career politician. He's a hardworking guy. And he's doing it for the right reasons. He's not doing it because he wants power or fame or money or anything like that. He's doing it because he wants to help the country. And if we don't get more people like him, like yourself, same thing. You're running for the same reason, for the right reasons. If we don't get people who run for the right reasons, we're done. And then when we do get people like yourself who run for the right reason, like Dan, they don't get the support they need to get over that hump and win the race. Because unless you have the ability to get your message out, you have no chance to get to Congress.
Right.
Because if you're in a congressional district, right, the average congressional district, 770,000 people. How do you reach those people? You have to have the money for direct mail. One mailer alone could run you $500,000.
Absolutely.
Excuse me. Oh, excuse me. Secondly, you need TV advertising. You need radio advertising. You need to make appearances so people can see you and get to know you, to know what you're about and who you are.
Right.
And then, of course, you're going to get attacked by your opponents. And as we saw in this contested primary, the opponent who loses doesn't always get behind the opponent that won. Now, I've been very fortunate. I've been able to get some of Dan's other opponents to support him. We're going to have Peter Arianes coming on the show. We had Kerry Lawler coming on the show. And that's what we need. We need unity. If we don't have a unified message, if we can't get people out to vote, we have no chance of taking back this country. And if we don't take back the country now, this November, it's lost. Look what happened 2 years ago when we lost the Congress, the Senate, and the presidency.
Yeah.
It's been a mitigated disaster ever since.
Absolutely, and you know, Dan Franzese is a great guy. He's an honest person. He's got a financial background. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to these economic policies with inflation. And you know, I think the most important thing of all about Dan is you can trust him.
Yes.
He's a man of his word, and he's going to do what he says he's going to do. And you know, that would be something new for any of us voters, to have a politician, well, he's not a politician, but an individual win elective office and actually go to Washington and represent the people. It would be almost a unique thing these days.
Right. And that's why it's so important that we get people. And that's the other thing that happens with politics. Politics is a blood sport.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're going to look for anything you've done wrong in the past. They're going to take things that you did and pervert them in such a way that it's used against you, even if you never did it. I mean, Dan was accused of taking Chinese money because he got a mortgage from HSBC Bank. I mean, okay, that was his bank, so we went to we got a mortgage, and well, it's China, right? So it's Chinese money you're taking for your mortgage. Does that make any sense?
No, it doesn't make any sense at all. And you know, you were talking about before about Debadimi's supporters, you know,
Right.
whether or not they're going to support Dan. Unfortunately, you know, the fact that she is not conceding the race is just, you know, helping out Lois Frankel. And, you know, the problem, I think you might have mentioned it before, but the Republican Party is a lot less unified than the Democrat Party is.
That's correct.
We're
Yeah.
a lot more
Yeah.
fractured, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it should be a situation where you run a campaign, and as nasty as it gets, you understand that the opponent that defeated you in the primary is 1,000 times better than the Democrat opponent. And it should be without question that you would support them.
Right. You know, just funny you should say that because I was thinking about the Loomer race with Dan Webster, where she claimed that after she lost that she was the real congressperson and that nobody should vote Republican anymore because she really won.
I mean, it's absolutely insane. That just what that shows is that the individual is either just self-serving, right? Doesn't care about the country, or has some kind of mental defect.
Yeah.
And that's the only those are the only possibilities. And I'd like to say to every Republican out there that if you do not vote for your Republican candidates, then you are voting for a Democrat this year. If you do not go out and vote, then you are in fact casting a vote for a Democrat, because we cannot win unless people go to the polls. And you know, we're not the party that will go and stuff ballot boxes. We're not going to ballot harvest. You know, we actually believe one person, one vote. You know, and it has to be a living person, someone who's breathing.
Well, that's the other
you
thing,
know,
right? The dead vote. We do not do well with dead voters. We don't.
No, they've totally. The Democrats have totally out-strategized us with the dead vote.
Yeah, those Civil War veterans.
Their get out the dead vote is killer.
It's killer, exactly. They mail in ballots. It's amazing when you see them come in, you know. But I mean, we won't go there. But certainly that could sway elections, you know.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
And you know, it's funny. Joe Biden gave a speech in October of 2020, and he said, "I put together the greatest voter fraud organization since Barack Obama."
The one honest thing he said.
Right. I mean, and people, you know, that clip doesn't get played long enough, but he told you what he did before he did it.
Mm-hmm. They don't even hide it anymore. Yeah. They know they're not going to be held accountable, so they don't even hide it anymore. And you know, here in Florida, we're fortunate to have a Republican legislature and a great governor in Ron DeSantis, who's just been an absolutely fantastic leader for the state in the face of a lot of vitriol.
Yes.
You know, but nothing's guaranteed, and Ron DeSantis is not going to be governor forever. And we can't take, just because we have a majority now, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working to pad that majority. You know, because my opponent, if I can talk about him for a second.
Of course, absolutely you can, absolutely.
Joe Casello voted against the parental rights in education legislation, which means he's okay with sexual and gender indoctrination in schools.
There you go.
He voted against keeping critical race theory out of our schools, so he's okay with anti-American, anti-white curriculum going into our schools. He voted against expanding school choice, which to me means that he's okay with wealthy people sending their kids wherever they go, but if you don't have the money, then you're going to be stuck in a failing school. You know, that to me is a civil rights issue. You know, education equality. He voted against that. He voted against banning sanctuary cities. So obviously, Joe Biden and the woke left open borders policy is more important to him than protecting Floridian citizens and protecting our systems. Because let's be honest, if we get thousands and thousands of illegal aliens coming into Florida, it's going to put pressure on our education system, our healthcare system, our criminal justice system, our social services system, and it's going to take away from what we can do for Floridian citizens. You know,
well, that's right. Exactly.
And so a vote, whether you vote for Joe Casello or you don't come out and vote, you're voting for more of the same. You're voting for that kind of vote in your representative in District 90. And I want to go to Tallahassee to be a DeSantis soldier. I want to make sure we're continuing to fight for our children in education, that we continue to fight for parents' rights, that we continue to fight to put Floridians over illegal aliens. And it's not hateful, it's not racist or xenophobic or anything to want to take care of Floridian citizens before anything else.
No, you got some great points. Let me ask you this question now. You're in a Democratic district. How do you turn Democratic voters and make them go and vote for Keith Feit?
Well, number one, we got to work hard. No matter what, we have to give a message to the voters out there. We need to let the voters understand why our conservative policies are better for them personally than the liberal policies. Why is it better to have someone who would vote for parents' rights in education than somebody who would vote for indoctrination in schools? Why is it better for them personally if we ban sanctuary cities and make sure we secure our own state borders? These things, every single one of these votes has to do with the quality of life of the Floridian people. Absolutely. And we need to give a message. It's my job. I have to let them know that I'm going to vote for policies that are going to make their lives better, that are going to be better for their rights, for their children's future, and for the state of Florida.
So from talking to the voters, what one story would you want to tell our audience about why your policies are so much better than Joe Casello's?
Well, I had a grandmother and a mother come up to me at an event, and the grandmother was so adamant. She was so angry, and she told me the story that her grandson, who might have been effeminate, I don't know. She didn't get into that, so I don't know why this happened, but she said that her grandson was walking down the hall at school, and the guidance counselor pulled the kid into the guidance office and said to him, "Are you sure you're comfortable being a male?
Okay.
Are you sure?" And when she told me this, I was like, "No, come on, that's not what happened." And yeah, she said that's exactly what happened. And unfortunately, we couldn't get into it more. But to hear that story of a kid being pulled into the guidance, it's not just what people don't understand is when we talk about this kind of indoctrination, it's not teaching about different identities, and it's actually trying to unduly influence these susceptible kids to promote a sexual, gender, and racial ideology that promotes their agenda.
That's true. It seems like everything is so anti-God. I mean, God said he made a male and female. And for many years, that was the case. Now, all of a sudden, some people, I heard, they interviewed some woman, they asked her, "Do you believe men can get pregnant?" She says, "Yes." Well, the only way that's possible is if you took a female and made him into a male, and they still had all the organs necessary to give birth.
Right.
Other than that, I don't know how it's quite possible.
No, it's not possible, and in fact, it would be very painful.
Yeah, I think so.
But my whole idea with this is everybody deserves to be happy. Everybody has a right to live whatever lifestyle makes them happy. And whatever your sexual preference is, whatever your gender identity is, that's up to you. So if Johnny prefers to be Jenny, fine. But the fact is, you still can't make other people uncomfortable by using a restroom that's not the restroom of your biological sex.
Right, exactly.
You shouldn't be competing in sports.
Absolutely.
If you don't have the same biological sex.
Right.
And unfortunately, you can't menstruate if you're a man that decided you're a woman. So live the life you want to live, and we have to respect that. I really believe, no matter what you believe personally, we need to respect other people's lifestyle choices and how they live their own lives. But it can't impact on the rights of others. And I think that's the big thing. Nobody I've ever spoken to, no matter how much they think a man is a man and a woman is a woman, has ever said that an individual doesn't have to have a right to live the way they want to live. They just don't have a right to push that onto other people. When you look in, I believe it was Wisconsin, you have 8th grade boys who are being prosecuted for sexual harassment because they used the wrong pronouns in addressing a transgender student. You know, that's over the top, you know, and that's where we're getting into this situation where we're infringing on the rights of others.
That's ridiculous.
I agree 100%.
But it's also ridiculous to let people steal up to $1,000 worth of merchandise. To have a no cash bail law that lets murderers back on the street to murder again.
Right.
They had a situation just recently in that same state, was it Illinois, where the murderer, when he was released, went out and murdered the witness.
Right.
Well, that's great. So you can keep murdering the witnesses, and before you know, you're a serial killer, but no, you're not going to be held in jail for 2 days because no cash bail.
I mean, look at what kind of society do these leftists want, where they want to defund the police.
Right.
They don't want people in prisons. They want to let everybody out of prisons. They actually, if you think about the Breathe Act, the Breathe Act was actually proposed by members of the Squad, and it talks about the complete elimination of our prison system. No prison, total defunding of the police. So no prison, no police, and decriminalizing. So they want to, I mean, no crimes, no laws, no police to defend us, no incarceration of those people who have committed crimes. I don't know about the voters out there, but that's not a society I want my 12-year-old son growing up in.
No, it's a lawless society.
Absolutely.
And we see the results of it in California already. Los Angeles. I mean, I have friends in the movie business, actors, professional actors. You met one of them, by the way.
Absolutely.
Crap hole, terrible.
Right.
Absolutely terrible. Nightmare.
Right.
One nightmare situation from the other. I mean, and the actor you met, his wife was assaulted by somebody. And now they moved out of the country because people don't want to live like that. If you look at the scenes of the sidewalks in San Francisco,
it's disgusting. It's disgusting.
Absolutely. You want to work there? You want to live there?
No. No. And it's insane to think about how much this current administration has spent overseas, how many billions of dollars have gone to Ukraine so that they can defend their borders.
Right.
But we can't defend our own border with American taxpayer money.
Yeah, it truly is.
That's
crazy.
disgraceful, and I think that's impeachable as well.
It seems like we've lost common sense. We've lost our way. Some of this stuff that we're talking about here in 2022, in 1970 would be so absurd. The fact that you'd let a male participate in women's sports. Obviously the swimmer that won the title was 435th among the men, but wins the women. I mean, and they want to give you an award for that, like you did something great. How about all those girls that put in all that time and effort, but because they had to compete against men, didn't get those scholarships that they otherwise rightfully would have deserved and had? Who didn't place in the state meet? It happened in Connecticut, where this happened, where males were running as females, and winning all these titles, winning because you're biologically different. A man has more muscle mass, right, than a woman. Right. That's how you're made. Women,
nature.
It's nature. Exactly right. And so this has gotten so crazy and off the charts. But what three things could we tell the people about what you would do differently than Joe Casello? What are just three things that you would do to make a difference in the lives of the average Floridian?
Well, number one, I'm going to talk about education because the government system is broken.
Yep.
There are too many failing schools, and we have a corrupt teachers union that's the power behind them.
Okay.
And Joe Casello He is a supporter of the teachers unions. He would prefer to side with them over parents and students.
Okay.
But I think we need to scrap the government system and have an education marketplace where public, charter, religious, and private schools all exist in a marketplace. They all build their programs, and then they let the market decide which schools are going to be successful, because the parents have an opportunity to choose the school that best fits their child's needs. And funding should be portable. The taxpayer money should go to whatever school the parent thinks is best for that child.
Makes sense.
I think we need to decentralize authority. We can cut down on education expenses by getting rid of probably upwards of 50% of school district personnel, because really what the school district should be doing is evaluating principals. Principals should be running their schools, and the district should just be evaluating them, because right now the districts control everything. And for instance, in Palm Beach County, you have schools in Boca Raton that are very wealthy, and then you have schools in Pahokee that are not. And you can't tell me that district policy mandates that are for both schools are possibly going to be equitable for each of those different kinds of schools. So we need to empower principals more. So that's one thing, universal school choice, and we need to make sure that the curricula are unbiased, they give multiple perspectives, and that our students are taught to think independently, that they are not told what to think, but actually taught how to think. So that's in education. I think cost of living is critical. We need property insurance reform. We need to make sure that Floridians can not only afford insurance, but that they can get coverage. We need to make sure we have so much money is lost in lawsuits. From insurance claims. So we need to make sure that insurers are actually fulfilling their obligations to the people they insure. And we need to cut back on these lawsuits to kind of bring the cost down. So we need to do a lot about property insurance reform. We need to cut the gasoline tax. I say cut it in half to make living in Florida more affordable. And we need to cut the red tape, the bureaucracy, and all the regulations that make it more costly to build homes. We need to build more of those homes to bring down the cost of existing homes. So I think cost of living in those areas.
Well, obviously, with Florida is a free state. More people are looking to come to Florida than anywhere else.
Right.
Rents went up 42%. As you know, I got priced out of my house. I'm now having to move and go build a house somewhere else, which will be fine. But I have to build, because if I don't build, I can't risk being homeless in 3 years because I can't afford the skyrocketing rents.
Right.
And so something has to be done about that. But we mentioned it before, with higher interest rates, we're going to see a housing crisis. It's going to be because people can't afford to buy anymore. Once you can't afford to buy, what do you do?
Right.
And with the stock market caving in, people are now losing money instead of making it. And that's a very dangerous combination. We're heading into dangerous waters, and it's frightening what's going to happen. So let's go back to your fundraiser on Wednesday.
Okay.
Tell people, Fiorella's 6:30. Come meet people. We're going to have a bunch of people there. It's going to be a great time. How do they buy tickets? One more time.
Go to our website. It's www.feit2022.org, FEIT2022.org. Scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, and right there's a flyer for the event and a link to purchase tickets right next to it. And we're going to have a bunch of candidates, local candidates there to speak to the people, and a raffle and book signing, and it's going to be a fun time.
Absolutely. We're going to have, and your host will be there to talk about you and the great job you would do when you get elected. And we're looking forward to it. We certainly are. So we're down to 2 minutes left. In the final 2 minutes of the show, what would you like to tell our audience?
Well, 2022 is the most important election of my lifetime, possibly of your lifetime as well. And the choice is simple. It's either individual liberty or government control. You know, it's freedom or tyranny. It's ridiculously high cost of living, or an environment in which you can not only survive, but you can thrive, you can prosper. It's about whether or not you want someone who's going to stand up for your kids, protect your children from ideological indoctrination, make sure that they learn instead of being taught or told what to think, that parents are empowered. You know, that's my platform. It's all about pro-parent, pro-police, pro-prosperity. Okay? Pro-parent, pro-prosperity, right, and pro-police. Those three things I think are critical. And, you know, Boynton Beach and Delray Beach, my district, two cities that are in the top 20% of least safe cities in the United States.
Wow.
You know, there's a lot of crime, and we don't hear a lot about it, but it's there. You know, we need to work on our schools. We need to work on our streets and make sure that it's safe for everyone. And we need to make sure that we have a representative who looks out for the people first. And that's what I'll do.
You know, Keith, you mentioned crime. Since George Floyd, they've changed the policing policies. Mm-hmm. And as a result of those policies being changed, crime has been rampant nationwide.
Right.
And that's really a big issue. Mm-hmm. We don't see it quite as much as Florida because we are more a Republican state, mm-hmm, but it's out there. So listen, please support Keith Feit. He'll do a great job as state representative. We thank you for watching the Political Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Vilardi. Till next week.
Thank you for watching the Political Power Hour with your host, Michael Vilardi. If you would like to see a particular candidate on our show, please email us at michaelvilardi@gmail.com. That's one L in Vilardi. We will see you next week.